This is lesson 2.1, doing fractions and decimals. So this says I will be able to compare fractions and decimals. I will also be able to correctly convert fractions into decimals and decimals into fractions. All right, that's what we're going to be able to do today. So our vocabulary today, we've got quite a bit of vocabulary we're going to talk about. So let's go ahead and go to we're on page 28 right now. Flip to page 27. And we're going to fill a few of these out. So the first one is place value. Okay, the place value is the value where a digit is in a number. A fraction is how many pieces you have of a whole unit. So how many parts of a whole unit? In a fraction, like 1/2, that means we have 1 out of 2 pieces. Okay, the numerator is the top number on a fraction. The numerator states how many parts we have. The denominator is the bottom number on a fraction. Okay, the denominator states how many pieces it takes to make a whole unit. So how many parts it takes to make a whole unit. All right, so let's see, is that all the definitions? Place value, fraction, numerator, denominator. Okay, we're going to talk about equivalent fractions, common denominator, unit fraction, improper fraction, and mixed number. So we have a lot of vocabulary. I have to fill them out the one time. Okay, so equivalent fractions are fractions that have the same value, but the numerators and denominators are different. So example, 1/2 is the same as 2/4. If I were to shade 1/2 of this circle, I got 1 out of 2 pieces. So if I take this one and I cut it into 4ths and I shade 2 of them, I've shaded the exact same amount. They're just cut into more pieces here. So that would be an equivalent fraction. Now a common denominator. The denominators are the same. To get common denominators, you multiply both the numerator and the denominator by the same number to make the denominators a common denominator. Or a common multiple, sorry, that's what I meant to put there. A common multiple of the original denominators. Okay, a unit fraction, definition of that is any fraction with a numerator of 1. So example, 1/3, 1/10, 1/3. has a 1 for a numerator. Same with 1/10, 1/4, 1/5. Okay? An improper fraction is any fraction where a numerator is larger than the denominator. All right, this is the last one for today. So mixed number is a whole number and a fraction combined. So in other words, an example would be like 2 and 1/3. We got 2 whole units and 1/3 with it. All right. Definitions written down. Go back to page 28. All right, remember we're talking about fractions and decimals here. So fractions and decimals both represent parts of a whole unit. Because of this, fractions and decimals have the exact same value. So it's basically two ways of writing the same number. So let's find the value of 5 divided by 4 with a remainder, with a decimal, and with a fraction. So 5 divided by 4 means I'm putting 5 inside the box, and I'm going to divide it by 4. So 4 is my divisor. So 4 goes into 5 one time. 1 times 4 is 4, so I subtract 4 whole units, leaves me with 1 unit left over. So with the remainder, I have a remainder of 1, so that means my answer is 1, remainder 1. Okay, as a decimal, how would that look? So remember what we learned last chapter. So 5 in the box, 4 over here. 4 goes into 5, 1 whole time. 1 times 4 is 4. So when I minus it here, I get 1. Now since I want a decimal answer, I'm going to place a decimal after the 5 because 5 is where the whole number was. And now I'm going to annex a 0 from the tenths place. So if I bring this down, I have 10. 4 goes into 10 2 times. 2 times 4 is 8. Subtract 8 and I have 2. Okay. I want to keep going till I get 0. So I'm going to bring down the hundredths place, which is a 0. 4 goes into 20 5 times. Oh, don't forget if there's a decimal here, it matches up here. Minus 20 gives me 0. So I have a decimal of 1 and 25 hundredths. So here's the remainder version. Here's the decimal version. Okay, and as a fraction, divide by 4. 4 goes into 5 one whole time. Minus 4 leaves me with 1. So I have 1 piece left over. So my fraction or mixed number answer would be 1 and 1 piece out of 4 to make a whole unit. 1 remainder 1, 1 and 25 hundredths, or 1 and 1/4. They all have the same value. 3 different ways to write the same number. Alright, so right here it says, after the last example, how do we turn a fraction into a decimal? Well, if this is 1 and 1/4, couldn't I write this the same as 5 over 4? So if I did 5 divided by 4, that would mean that 5 is the numerator and 4 is the denominator. That line right there means divide. So how do we turn a fraction into a decimal? All we have to do is divide the numerator by the denominator. All right, let's try turning these fractions into decimals. That means whatever's on top goes inside the box, and this goes outside the box. So this would be 12 25ths, so 12 divided by 25. Okay, I can't go into this place value. I can't go into this place value. I'm going to put a 0 here though, because I need to go into the decimal. So I'm going to annex a 0. Now I can go in. 25 can go into 120. Let's see, 25, 50, 75, 100. 125 is too much, so that would be 4 times. So I'm going to put a 4 up here. 4 times 25 is 100. That's going to leave me with 0, 2, 0. So that leaves me with 20. I annex the 0 and I move to the next place value. 25 will go into 208 times. 8 times 25 is 200. And that leaves me with 0. So this, in its decimal form, is 0 and 48 hundredths. Alright, let's do this one. Ooh, 2 1/8. If I want to divide the numerator by the denominator, I've got this 2 here. So let's make this improper. So times to the bottom, 2 times 8, which is 16, plus 1, which is 17. So this is the same as 17 over 8. So if I put 17 inside the box, if I want a decimal, my decimal will be at the end of the whole number, because I'm dividing 17 by 8. 8 is my denominator. So 8 won't go into 7 or into 1, but it will go into 17 2 times. Minus 16 gives me 1. So I have 1 whole unit. I'm going to move into tenths. 8 goes into 10 one time. Minus 10. Or what am I doing? Minus 1 times 8 is 8, so this would be 8. 10 minus 8 gives me 2. Annex another 0, bring it down. 8 squeezes into 20, let's see, 8, 16, 24, so only 2 times. 2 times 8 is 16. Ooh, we're going to run out of space here, but I think we can make it. Need to borrow. 10 minus 6 is 4, and 1 minus 1 is 0. Annex another 0, bring it down. 8 goes into 40 5 times. Minus 40 evenly gives me 0, or donut. We're happy, we're done. So 2 1/8 is the same as 2 125 thousandths. This one here is the same as 48 hundredths. These are equal to each other. We're just turning them into their decimal form. Alright, 2/3 means 2 is going to be inside the box, 3 outside. 3 will not squeeze into 2, so I'm going to put a 0 there, and I know I'm going to go into the decimal portion. So I'm going to annex a 0. 3 can go into 20 6 times. 6 times 3 is 18, so I subtract 18. That leaves me with 2, annex a 0, bring it down. 3 goes into 20 6 times, minus 18. That leaves me with 2. Annex a 0. I have 20 minus 18. Put a 6 up here. Okay, you're probably noticing something. 18, 20 minus 18. So I'm going to end up with another 20 and I'll minus 18. So this is going to keep going. This is what is known as a repeating decimal. This is going to repeat forever and ever and ever and ever. So I could keep doing it forever and ever, or as soon as I see the pattern happening, I can say that this is equal to 0 and 6 with a line over it. That means repeating. This pattern Keeps going. 6, 6, 6, 6, 6, 6, 6. All right. Turn to part 2 of these notes. Okay, we'll try to make this a little quicker. Okay, quick place value review. Write out each of the following numbers in words. So now that we know how to go from fractions to decimals, we're going to go backwards. So this is in the thousands place. So this would be 28 thousandths. This one here, we have 1 whole unit, and then this goes to the hundredths place. So this is 1 and, okay, this and's important, 24 hundredths. Okay, this one, we have 23 whole units, and the decimal place value, that's the tenths. So I have 23 and the and represents the decimal point. 7 tenths. Okay, now if you can say the name of each one of these, that's going to make turning in decimals into fractions much easier. So thinking of the name in words for each of the numbers above, how would that translate into a fraction? Well, it tells us thousandths. This means out of 1,000. How much out of 1,000? 28. 1 whole and this many pieces out of 100. 23 wholes and how many pieces out of 10? So the last decimal place value represents the denominator. So here it says write each decimal in its simplest form. So here's the word 28 thousandths. That means 28 pieces out of 1,000. Now it asks us to put it in simplest form. So after that, this is where we're looking for common factors, and we're going to reduce both of them by the same thing. So 28 and 1,000, a common factor, they're both even, so I'm going to divide by 2. If I divide 28 by 2, I get 14 over 1,000 divided by 2 is 500. Now I look at it again and I say, can I reduce that again by anything? They're both even, so 2 will work. So divide by 2, divide by 2. 14 divided by 2 gives me 7. 500 divided by 2 is 250. Now, 250 and 7 don't share anything in common, so there is my simplified fraction. But do you see how the name of the decimal place value helps us to create the first fraction? All right, so this one is 1 and 24 hundredths. So this means I have 1 whole unit and 24 hundredths, which means 24 out of 100. Then from there, I just reduce. What goes into both 24 and 100? Well, I like to just start easy. Dividing by 2 is easy to me to do halves. So this could reduce to 1, and 24 divided by 2 is 12 over 100 divided by 2 is 50. Oh, still even, so I'm going to divide by 2 again. 12 divided by 2 gives me 6. 50 divided by 2 gives me 25. And I still have 1 whole unit there. 6 and 25, 3 goes into here but not into 25. These don't share anything else in common, so that is as simplified as that will get. So 1 and 24 hundredths is the same as 1 and 6 25ths. This one here, we have 23 whole units. and 7/10. So I'm going to write 7/10. Now in this case, I don't have any common factors at all, so that's as simplified as that one's going to be. All right, so fractions into decimals. By dividing the numerator by the denominator, it will always work to turn a fraction into a decimal. So if you're not sure what to do, dividing the numerator by the denominator always works. However, for some fractions there's a shortcut. If you can turn the denominator into a place value name. Place value name value. So what I mean by that is turn each fraction below into a decimal, use the shortcut if applicable. So 25. So thinking of our decimal place values, if I can turn this into 10, 100, 1,000, 10,000, that makes it easier to go into a decimal. So you can divide 13 by 25 and get your answer, and it will work. But what I can do is I can turn 25 into 100. So if I times this by 4, I can make the bottom 100. But if I times the bottom by 4, I times the top by 4 as well. So 13 times 4 is 52. Let's look and make equivalent fractions. Now since this is out of 100, think about your place value. 52 out of 100, that means 52 hundredths. So if you can make the connection between turning that into a place value name, then you can easily go from fraction to decimal. Now 6, I can't turn 6 into 100 easily like this one was, like multiplying by 4. So if that's the case, that means let's just do the division. So I'm going to do 1 divided by 6. So 6 goes into 1, 0 times. So I'm going to keep going, annex a decimal and a 0. 6 goes into 10 4 times. Minus 6 gives me 4. Annex a 0, bring it down. 6 goes into 40. 6 times minus 36 gives me 4. Annex a 0, bring it down. 6 goes into 40 6 times minus 36 gives me 4. And you're seeing a pattern here. I'm just going to keep going. 40, 36, 40, 36, 40, 36. That means this is a repeating decimal. The answer to this would be 0, 4, and then 6 is the only part repeating, so I only put a line over the 6. That would mean 0.464646, but that's not what this one does. So this one I could do the shortcut because I can make this 100. This one I can't easily turn into anything. Okay, I have 7 over 500. This one I can easily turn into 1,000 just by timesing it by 2. So I'm going to times this by 2 and that by 2. So if I make this over 1,000, that tells me my place value. Now how many pieces do I have? 7 times 2 is 14. So 14 thousandths. That means I'm going to put 14 in the thousandths place. The thousandths is 1, 2, 3. So I need to put 14 in the thousandths place. That means there would be a 0 here. So I turn that, that's using the shortcut. This one I couldn't use the shortcut. Why? Because I couldn't easily turn it into 10, 100, or 1,000. Okay, 3 and 3/5. This one, I have 3 whole numbers, so I know that's going to be 3 point something. Now, can I turn 5 into one of those place values easily? I can. I can turn it into 10 by timesing it by 2. Good. So if I times this by 2 and I times this by 2, that gives me 10. 3 times 2 is 6. So I get 6 tenths. That means I'm going to put a 6 in the tenths place. Okay, so hopefully that helps you understand how to turn decimals into fractions and fractions into decimals. Rate yourself on this concept. Are you a 1, 0, 1, 2, 3, or 4? Circle it, take a picture, and put it in your math menu.